Eddie Traxler, back once again, jazzchat.org. I have my friend Gary Morin here today, who plays the accordion. We've played together a little bit. Like I used to, years ago, I hosted an open jazz jam at a martini bar up in Fitchburg, and that's where we met, right?
Right.
We used to come and sit in with us
Yep.
at that one. And I think the Jazz Depot still does some of those. I haven't been lately. I still do some gigs with the bass player and the drummer, but I haven't been doing too much with the rest of them. But anyway, we have a couple of public domain tunes. We're going to play through them, and then we'll chat about it a bit. We're going to start with What Is This Thing Called Love? It's a Cole Porter tune, one of my favorite composers from that era, or of all time, really. But, you know, you can listen to different versions. It was probably a show tune of some kind. I meant to research where, you know, what play it came from. But, like a lot of these tunes, there's another whole long part that no one ever plays, you know. But it's a good, you know, Django Reinhardt and those guys all did this song. There's tons of versions, so check it out, and we're gonna do our best to give you our version of it. And so, 4 bars up front.
4 bars.
Or 8? Do you want whatever?
4 bars is good.
All right, 4 bars up front. You want to? That was What Is This Thing Called Love? I believe the copyright is 29 or 28. 1929. A lot of good music in that era. I think, well, I guess that was the beginning of the Great Depression. I don't think, probably not too many people that are alive now were around then. But I remember my grandmother used to teach us like similar tunes, you know. She would teach us like how they would dance to Charleston and all that, you know. So I did kind of hear this style of stuff when I was young. It's a standard that gets played a lot. Django Reinhardt, one of my favorites. But it's Stefan Grappelli that plays the head on that, violinist. But anyway, my approach, we didn't rehearse this really, so when I went to take a solo, I was kind of staying on safer ground because I was just kind of looking at the chords as they were going by. They're not necessarily all within the key of C, so you can't just play a C scale. If you download my book, it talks about chords within a key. So we kind of take a look at that. The very first thing that's going on, as I see it, there's a minor 7 flat 5 to a 5 chord. It's a dominant chord, rather. It says we're in the key of C, and we do end on a C. But to me, right off the bat, that's a 2-5 of the F minor. So right there, we're in F minor in the very beginning. You have a B flat in the melody and an A flat in the melody. So a C scale would kind of clash. And then after that, you cadence into the C. So it's pretty much, I was kind of watching those chords as I was going by. And you can transcribe other people's stuff too and kind of figure out what they were doing in this, find versions that you like. And I'm going to let Gary tell you maybe how he went about approaching this tune.
Well, I like to substitute some chords. I mean, I'll play it pretty much to scale, but I do substitute. Like, to me, in the beginning, it almost sounds like a C sharp diminished, or maybe I'll use a G minor 7 flat 5 to an F minor, and then resolve it to go into the end on the key of C.
Yeah.
So, and then the bridge, of course, you're going in, it sounds like you're merging into B flat, then you drop to A flat, and you go down to the 5th and out.
And which is really common. There's a lot of tunes that do that,
He did have a good imagination for writing, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had they wrote some incredible melodies. When I listened to, that's a great tune, and they in all kinds of styles, that whatever it called for at the time. How long have you been playing accordion, and what got you into jazz?
I started playing when minimum wage was $1.65. That was around 1971.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to take some lessons, and my mother wasn't crazy over me playing the instrument. She wanted me to play guitar. But I went into junior high, and there was a teacher there, and he was an accordion player.
Yeah.
And he caught my attention. He was teaching us how to sing pop tunes.
Uh-huh.
So I said, wow, this is great. So I started to take a couple lessons, and my mother got disgusted with me, and which is unusual. You'd think the parents would want to, tell you, learn how to do this. She went to the record store, and she brought home an album. Well, the guy's name was Art Van Dam, and he played jazz accordion. Cool. I was stunned.
Yeah.
I said, wow, listen to this guy. He's superior.
Yeah.
So, of course, as time went on, I looked for more jazz guys, and I found several. And then a neighbor, he played bass, and he played professionally. He said, you need a teacher to teach you jazz. I'm going to send you out to Dorchester. Well, I was living in the city in Lynn, but I used to take all the trains into Dorchester to take lessons.
Yeah.
And I did that for probably 5-6 years, and he was amazing, the stuff he played.
That's cool. Yeah. Do you have a good accordion joke for us?
You know what the difference is between a trampoline and an accordion? You don't have to take your shoes off to jump on an accordion.
All right. That's a good one. Yeah, that's, well, for me, I didn't grow up around here. I grew up in North Carolina, but my parents weren't discouraging, but they weren't, it's like more like you got to figure out other ways to make a living. You know, you can't as a career musician, which is kind of what I had in the back of my head, way back in the back, and I really didn't even share that with them. But it was just, well, this is really what I want to do. But I was exposed to a lot of different stuff, and we did, you know, all of us, we took piano lessons when we were kids. I had 2 brothers, 1 sister, and we had one of the. We also had one of those organs that it was the modern thing of the time with the different drum beats and the family organ, whatever they're called.
They call that the fun machine, I think.
Something like that. But you know, I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago. We were doing a tune, and it called for foxtrot, and that's the only way I remembered what a foxtrot, because one of those drum beats was a foxtrot. But apparently that, you know, that was a dance that they did, you know. And even during my time, my parents would go out, like on a certain night, they would go out dancing. It was the thing to do, you know. I don't know if people really do that much anymore. And, you know, they would have bands that worked, you know, doing all the pop tunes of the time and the jazz standards.
I did a lot of that back in the 70s. I played with different bands that would look for playing Saturday night and Friday night dances. And that was popular. They did foxtrots, you know, rumba, tango. And it was a popular thing. So a lot of people really enjoyed that from like 8 to 12 on a Saturday night.
Yeah, that's really cool that that you got to do some of that. I grew up playing, and you know, I did take some formal guitar lessons, and the teachers were trying to teach me like folk songs, and I wanted to learn to play, you know, Led Zeppelin and Rolling Stones and stuff like that. So I was just hanging out with a lot of people who played and learned off of the classic rock stuff. And then when I wanted to study guitar formally in Greensboro, where I grew up, I assumed I would have to study classical guitar. So that's what I studied, because that's really all they offered down there. And for me, I mean, I was in my 30s when I decided to go back to college full time. Berkeley was a long shot, but I applied and I got in, and that's how I ended up in the Northeast. They kept giving me financial aid, kept giving me jobs to work there, you know, so I just kept doing what was in front of me. But I'm super glad I did it, because I do make a living. That's all I've done is play and teach for the past 20, 30 years. And I tell my students, you know, they always want to bring up, well, you know, Wes Montgomery couldn't read music, or, you know, this guy couldn't read, or whoever, you know. Most of my good paying gigs are because I can read, you know. I wouldn't be able to, I teach at a college now. I wouldn't be able to do any of that stuff if I couldn't read music. If I get theater work, like they call it pit band work, they expect me to read the notes, you know. So it's not like, and it's, you know, it's good pay, even if it's not what I really want to do. It's better than, you know, doing some job I hate just to support myself. I had friends, you know, that got out of Berkeley, and they, you know, it used to be like, you know, New York, Nashville, or L.A. if you wanted to be a musician. But a lot of them end up working, you know, restaurants or whatever jobs they don't particularly like, and just their playing gets put on the back burner because they just have to work to pay the rent, you know.
I did the Broadway musical Evita a few years ago at the Ashburnham High. And that book was rough because Andrew Lloyd Webber, he writes a lot of stuff in 5/4, you know, 11/8. It was crazy, the tempos. And I asked the director, I said, can I take this book home and woodshed it? He's sure. So I says, because I couldn't imagine having to read this.
Yeah, they're tough.
And my parts were like highlighted. He said I highlighted parts for everybody to see. And I said, wow. But it was really quite the experience to play that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, guitar players, I'm not sure about accordion, but piano players, most piano players can read, and horn players, most of them can read really well. You know, that's the way they play. They only play single line melodies. So they're pretty used to that, and especially the ones that do that kind of work regular, you know. But I think guitar players were kind of taught thinking about patterns and chords and, you know, stuff like that. But I think it's good to do a lot of both. And
I
have
do that a
ear.
lot at home. My wife will say to me, what are you thinking about? I say, a chord anatomy. And she says, oh. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. I usually keep it to myself. But
Well, she can tell when the wheel is turning.
Yeah.
You know, what are you thinking about? Chords, songs. I got a pattern I got to try.
Yeah, I can remember when I lived in Boston. I would be riding the train or something. I'd be counting these rhythms. I'd make my steps steady, to try to get something in my head,
Yeah.
But cool. We do have another song. We have this "Ain't Misbehavin'," which is I don't even know who wrote this tune. Do you?
I'm not sure.
But it is well within our public domain. I have researched that. Gary decided he wanted to do it in E flat.
Sorry.
No, it doesn't bother me at all. And most, if you're like me, guitar players, when you first learn, you're used to playing in, G, C, or, guitar players love E, like the E blues, because we have all those open strings. But, horn players, they really don't much care for E.
No, they like flats.
They're like, because they have two more sharps, like trumpet or tenor sax or clarinet. Those are B flat instruments.
Yeah, string players like violinists and stuff. I worked with a guy for several years, and he liked a lot of sharps. He liked D, G, and A, the keys.
Yeah,
so he said, many times he'd say, I want to change the key. I said, oh, gee.
And that is something you want to get used to. If you want, especially if you're playing clubs and stuff, you'll have some singer want to sit in and they'll, oh, well, I can't sing it in that key. And you have to switch on the fly. And that's why I think a lot of us, we talk about it in numbers. Session players do too. That's why I was saying that we started out that other one with a like a 2/5 of the F, and then we go to a 2/5 of the. So we're thinking in numbers, and if you think about it that way, makes it a little bit easier to change keys.
Right.
But really, if you when you're learning tunes, I think if you learn them in a bunch of different keys, it forces you to get that melody in your head a lot better and the chord progression, I think. But it takes time. It's not like something that comes
Oh, no. My teacher I had in the 70s, he used to say, take as many tunes as you can, transpose it in many keys, and do the same chord patterns. He says, you're going to stumble, you're going to have issues, but you should learn it in many, because you never know when some singer is going to come in front of everyone. They're going to be waiting, and they're going to hit you with an odd key, and you're going to go, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's important. I had one teacher at Berkeley. He would have us do standards. He would give us a standard in class. Within a couple of weeks, however long he gave us, we would have to be able to play the head, play the changes, and solo over it in any key. So you really force yourself. I mean, guitar players can get by with a couple of different fingerings, but so you can just move them around, But if you really do, the tunes I learned for that class, they're still in my head. They're ingrained and they're pretty good. But yeah, we're gonna do this "Ain't Misbehavin'," and maybe we'll discuss it a little bit. What's a good version? There's tons of good versions of this one. I think Billie Holiday and people like that did this tune, right?
Yep.
It's somewhat of a vocal tune.
Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
I think Fats Waller did it on piano, too.
That's who it's by, I think. I believe it is by.
I think it's Fats Waller.
I think it is a Fats Waller tune, which he was one of the innovators of, early swing jazz. Cool. So what did we say on this? 8 or 4 up front, or?
Yep.
And that's another thing. Like, I've talked about on this before. Generally, as a chordal instrument, they might expect us to be able to do something like that. And what you're kind of cueing the band, the speed of it, and you got to really let the listener know where the top of the tune is, and that's important, because they would just say, all right, set it up, that would be the jazz slang, set it up, take the head, we'll just take a solo, play the head out,
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, we would know what that means. But if you're just starting, a lot of the old guys don't want to tell you. They're like, I'm showing you nothing.
I've had guys come up and say, I'm going to sing this tune, and he'd point to different musicians. You're going to do A, he's going to do B, and I go, huh?
Yeah, yeah, we all have to learn. I think and everybody plays a bad set every now and then.
Yeah,
So
you just never know.
that's it. You can only learn by making mistakes. That's what I tell my students. All right, so what are we gonna do on 4 up front or?
4.
All right, one. Go ahead. Keep going. Ahead. Wow. Good. We'll end it there. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that's something you run into too. Those cues. Cool. So ain't misbehaving. That's a somewhat of a typical chord progression. We're going from E flat to E diminished.
Right.
It's kind of you hear that a lot in like gospel music, like like a passing chord. Sometimes I just think about we'll just raise the root, because it's kind of that. And then other substitutions, like when we have those 2/5s to 2/5 to 1 or something like that, you can just chromatically go down, if that makes sense. If we were in C, would be pretty typical, but you could go just as easy, you know
Right.
what I mean? And I think about substitutions a lot, especially if I have a bass player, that because and if you go to jazzchat.org, I'll have these triads loaded up. If you practice those a lot in all 12 keys, that's what I use more than anything on the high 3 strings is these triads. So, but if you think about like say an A minor 7th, or something like that, if my bass player is playing the A, a good bass player is going to prefer that I don't play the roots, So I can just think those. So a C triad, with that's my A minor 7th, and then you can do it like a 9th, like that's really it's a C major 7th, but with an A in the bass, it's like it kind of has a cool sound, But it's not something I learned overnight, and we all start from the basics, learning some, beginner jazz tunes. All of me is pretty straight up. That's one I think a lot of people learn in the beginning, or I guess that one's not public domain yet. I think this year. There's a lot of tunes going to come up this year.
You can play with a lot of these songs, like even in Ain't Misbehaving, you can use the A minor 7 flat 5, A flat 7, G7 with the F7, F sharp, 7th. Just keep going down. You know, that's a good pattern.
Yeah, and that's you. When you get into more of the later, like the Charlie Parker and stuff, he was playing like the changes to older tunes a lot of times, and he would put his own thing on top. But they were doing a lot of that then. Like I think last week was with a trumpet player, and we did Indiana, which is the same as Donna Lee. It's the changes, or I think.
Oh yeah.
So there's a bunch of them. We talk about rhythm changes. It's the changes that I got rhythm. But to learn that in all 12 keys, there's a ton of those Charlie Parker tunes that are that. And a lot of them are that form, too. That.
Oh, yeah.
You usually go to a bridge, But there's variations on that too.
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's an important jazz tune to really get under in all 12 keys. As I got rhythm, or we call it rhythm changes. And if you look it up, you'll see like tons of songs that are off of that those changes. Cool. Well,
even the ending, you can do an ending where you come down to the end. You can do the A minor 7 flat 5 there. Just do a chromatic.
Yeah, that sounds good, and yeah, that's important too.
It's a little more progressive than they did it back then, but
they do expect a lot of times they expect us to do some type of ending. There's the one you hear. You hear that? That one's almost cliche, or
oh yeah,
or something like that. So. But listen to different ones. Listen to who you like. For me, I like Barney Kessel, Joe Pass.
Oh, sure.
Those guys. They were really good players. And there's an old, I don't know if it could be a proverb, a Chinese proverb, but I don't know where it came from. To seek what the masters have, or to seek what they were seeking, to figure out how they were going about learning this, rather than playing exactly like them. And that's what I like to encourage, is to seek this stuff out on your own. We have about 2 minutes. Today happens to be 9/11, so maybe we'll end on a little bit of Star Spangled Banner in our 2 minutes. So we may be cut off, but we'll do our best to. All right. We got about 30 seconds. I'd like to thank Gary for coming on. You'll have to come back on when you get time. We'll pick another tune.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome job. We really didn't rehearse this stuff, but we had confidence in each other because we had heard each other play, and we know how to communicate. Whether you read music or not, you still have to have a way to communicate this stuff.
For
And
sure.
that's it. We're right at our half hour. So thanks for watching jazzchat.org.
Thank you.